Assalamu alaikum. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the event of Islamic countries, academics and authors union. Today, we are going to talk about Sudani crisis. And this is Muhammed Hüseyin Merjan speaking. I'm Associate Professor of International Relations at Marmara University. And today we have two distinguished guests, Dr. Serhat Orakcı and Dr. ElSadiq ElFaqih. And we are going to discuss about what's happening exactly in Sudan, and also we will try to understand the background of a Sudani crisis, and we will try to analyze different aspects of Sudani crisis in the light of recent developments in the country. And our speakers, our guests are experts on Sudani politics, and their approach and their analysis will benefit us to understand the background of the crisis, and also to find or to see the possibility of a future positive negotiations or a peaceful solution for the country. Before we start, I would like to introduce our distinguished guest, and Dr. Serhat Orakcı. He has obtained BA in Economics at Istanbul University in 2001, and he completed his MA in Historical Studies at University of Johannesburg in South Africa in 2007. He worked as project director in Sudan for IHH Foundation during 2007 and 2011, and took part in various community development projects. He published his first book, The Ottoman Legacy in South Africa, in 2011 from Lampert Publishing. During 2011 and 2016, he worked for IHH Foundation as Africa Relief Coordinator. In 2018, he published his second book, on Turkey-Africa Relations. And Dr. Orakcı completed his PhD on the question of national integration in Sudan at Istanbul Sabahattin Zaim University in 2020. And he is currently working as a researcher at Social and Humanitarian Research Center in Samer in Istanbul. And our second guest, Dr. and diplomat ElSadiq ElFaqih. He is currently Professor of International Relations and Diplomacy at Sakarya University, and advisor to the Director of the Middle East Studies Center, ORSAM. And he is former ambassador of the Republic of the Sudan to Addis Ababa, the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia, and permanent representative. He was permanent representative to the African Union and the United Nations Economic Council for Africa, and was the chairman of the board of UNECA. He was also ambassador of the Sudan to the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan, to Amman, and also to the state of Palestine. And he was former Secretary General of Amman-based Arab Thought Forum. He specializes in political communication, international relations, and diplomacy. And he studied philosophy, history, anthropology, sociology, media, and political science and the economy of development in several universities in Sudan, Egypt, Europe, and America. And before we start, I would like to give brief information regarding the structure of our panel. There will be 4 rounds in our panel, and in each panel, our speakers will have 5 minutes to discuss about the theme, and also to bring their ideas and their arguments to the table. And firstly, we would like to we will start with the discussion of the background of the current crisis in Sudan, to understand what happened exactly in the country. And we will start with Mr. Orakcı. And Doctor, let me ask you, what happened in Sudan, and why did we witness such a crisis, and why the Sudanese people So the eruption of such a destabilizing crisis among the political elites in Sudan. The floor is yours, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Merjan, and welcome to the guest. And I'd like to thank also IBIR Foundation because it is a timely event, because the situation in Sudan is very fragile and the country is in a conflict which entered the third week and causing some civilian casualties and humanitarian crisis day by day. To understand the current conflict in Sudan, there are a lot of actually factors or parameters. You have to look the history, the political history of the country, the role of the military, and regional crisis of the Sudan, and maybe the economic crisis as well, because Sudan is in a fragile situation since 2011, when the South Sudan ceded from Sudan. The country lost a big revenue from its oil reserves, and this also affected the government expenses quite high. So after that, we saw some street protests in Sudan. You can remember. It started in 2018, later continued in 2019, and as a result, this protest movement toppled the old regime, the Omar al-Bashir regime in Sudan. Since then, Sudan was in a transitional period, and on the political landscape, usually we see the generals. Two generals. Right now, they are clashing each other. Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, the first man of the transitional government, and Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo, known as Hemeti, is the second person in the transitional government. So we witness nowadays their clash, and this become a very serious level. And we also try to understand why they clash each other, what they want exactly, and what is the main cause paving way for their clash. I think this crisis highly related to the Darfur crisis of Sudan. I should say that because right now in Sudan we see a rope pulled by the generals. On one side there is RSF, Rapid Support Forces, pulling the rope to himself, and on the opposite direction there is SAF, the Sudanese armed forces. They are also pulling the same rope on the opposite direction, and their main aim is to eliminate the rival. Okay, and they are seeking full power, full political, economic power. They want the whole pie. At that level, we have to understand the structure of the RSF, because RSF is right now presenting a unique case for Sudan and for the other African countries. What is RSF? Why there is a unit inside the security structure of Sudan? We have to understand this because the background of the RSF, Rapid Support Forces, comes from Darfur. They have a Janjaweed background. RSF and its leader, Hemeti, has a Janjaweed background. And Janjaweeds played very crucial role in the Darfur crisis, especially when the International Criminal Court, ICC, issued a warrant for the President Omar al-Bashir in 2009 and 10 period. We saw the Janjaweed name very often in the international media. What is Janjaweed and why they became all of a sudden very important for Sudan? Janjaweed is a militia actually, and at the background of this militia there is an alliance between government and the militia. There is a strategy. And this strategy uses the militia power against the rebels, because in 2003 and 4 there was a heavy fighting in Darfur region. Some rebel groups, SLM, Sudan's Liberation Movement, Abdul Wahid al-Nur faction, Sudan's Liberation Movement, Miniminawi faction, and later Justice and Equality Movement, Khalil Ibrahim, they all imposed a very serious threat to the Sudanese army. And army started using some local militia groups to challenge to these rebel groups. From that background, the RSF came actually. In 2003 and 4 and 5, we see intelligence services, military intelligence services. They were very active in Darfur region, and they were recruiting militia power. And this militia power used against the rebel groups. So from Darfur to Khartoum, this militia group has a journey. And in 2018, when the street protest started in Khartoum, regime, the old regime, Omar al-Bashir regime, called this RSF units from Darfur to Khartoum in order to protect the regime. But the things actually evolved differently, and Himeti, Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo, sided against Bashir and joined the coup in 2019. After then, we see Himeti in the Sudanese politics. So from that background, I understand that Himeti has big ambitions. He doesn't want to be local actor. He wants to be national, maybe international actor or regional actor in Sudan, because right now, challenging to the army, he is seeking to get full power of the country from political and from economical angles. And we know that RSF is controlling a big amount of gold reserves in Sudan. And they have very dark connections in Libya and in Chad as well. And we also know that they have some diplomatic initiatives with Wagner group of Russia, and they have also some meetings with United Arab Emirates and with Israel, Mossad agents, etc. So they have a very secret network and very influential connections in that region. So I don't think their agenda is not. They have I think they have a very large agenda, and they like to get full power of the country to implement this agenda, I think. And I think they maybe later we will discuss the external factors, external actors. But to understand the RSF structure and what their role in the Sudanese politics, we like to touch this external actors' role in Sudan. In 2019, when the old regime has gone, there was expectations for the democratic and civilian government in Sudan. But generals, they dominated the politics, shortly showed their real faces, and they eliminated the civilian coalitions, and they actually show us that they're looking to stay in the power. They don't like to share this power with the civilian coalitions. So since 2021, when they toppled Abdullah Hamdok, the prime minister, we see the clash of the generals in the country, and now it became a very dangerous level and pulling the Sudan in a very fragile situation, I think. Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Doctor, for your contribution. And now, Dr. ElFaqih, as we know, there were some expectations regarding the democratization of Sudan in the post-Bashir era, as Mr. Orakcı mentioned, and also in the post-2011 process, there were some also attempts to democratize the country. But today, when we look at the current picture in the light of recent developments, so do you think that whether there were some footsteps of a political crisis in the country, and what factors did they accelerated the eruption of the crisis? And finally, when we look at the RSF's roots, we clearly see it goes back to 2003. So can we claim that Sudanese people or Sudanese political elites are currently paying the prices of the mistakes of or wrong strategies of Omar al-Bashir? Okay.
Thank you so much, and salam to everybody in the panel. And I also thank the Serhat for his good introduction of what was going on in the country regarding the RSF. Yes, there is a claim to be leveled against the political elites in the country, not only the specific government, but the traditions, if the times allows, the traditions of in meddling, the central power of in Khartoum meddling in the situation in Darfur goes back to 1915. When the British were there, and they were the first to arm tribal militias to bring down the Sultanate of Darfur at the time, Ali Dinar, who used to have an excellent relations with the Ottomans at the time, and they did it in 1916. And since then, Darfur never witnessed breasts. All successive national governments also tried to arm tribal militia for their own favor, or to keep at least a peace in Darfur, or to guard themselves in Khartoum, and al-Bashir government was not an exception at all. But the problem aggravated when al-Bashir left power. When the RSF created during al-Bashir time was confined to Darfur, and it was very limited. It did an excellent job for al-Bashir government by rebelling or quelling the rebellion there in Darfur before 1918. But as my colleague said, they were brought in, a unit of them brought in when the demonstrations started late 2018 and early 2019. And they committed what was well known in dispelling the rebellion or the demonstrators who were gathered in front of the general headquarters of the Sudanese army. But those who are following the details of the Sudanese politics since the demise of al-Bashir government, they also witness a strong attack on the national army. There were a lot of talk at the beginning of the revolution, or it was not really a revolution, but it was half military, half revolution, because in the three uprising in our recent history, 1965, 1964, 1985, and 2019, all the popular uprising coupled with military force. So it culminated in toppling the governments, but also half military and half civilian. It is the same case in 2019. The military intervened and joined the civilian in toppling al-Bashir government. Since that moment, we witness a huge campaign of smearing the reputation of the military in the country. And this is not only exception to Sudan. After the Arab Spring, all those countries who went directly to elections, the military on those countries who witnessed change was attacked by their own civilians and also attacked by foreign governments and foreign forces who were against the Arab Spring and the Arab uprising in those countries. And Sudan was not exception, but Sudan got the largest amount of, or the heaviest campaign against the national military. And there were a lot of talk and a lot of recorded incidents and a lot of also literature on calls to change the formal military or the national military and replace it with paramilitary groups, the groups that Serhat mentioned, whether from Darfur or from South Kordofan or from southern Blue Nile in the country. And there were countries behind this call. The intention is to eliminate all the influence thought to be exerted or built within the military structure or apparatus by the Islamists who ruled the country for 3 decades under al-Bashir government. So this idea of an ideological army propelled a lot of forces within the country and outside the country to seek a real change within the military. And they were never shy about this idea of changing the ideology of the military and changing the formation of the military and replacing the military with these paramilitary forces. This is why we witness since 2019 the RSF used to be less than 20,000 soldiers up to the change of al-Bashir government. But we witness a huge buildup and a lot of training, not only within the country, but outside the country. And a lot of resources also brought in to the RSF beside what they already get their hands on, whether it is gold or whatever resources within the country. And also they got a lot of resources by their external relations from regional countries and also from beyond regional countries. And they built a huge force which amounted for more than 100,000 soldiers, foot soldiers. They only lacked, until they started this move against the government, they only lacked air force and heavy artillery divisions. But they are well equipped, well prepared, even for this latest move. The military have been watching their deployments, their movements, their supports. They organize camps all over the country. In the 18 states, they had well-organized camps, well-facilitated, well-supported camps in all the 18 states. And within the capital city, with the help of these small political parties who have the loudest voice and supported by the international community and regional governments, they also went along with the RSF, and they were always calling for the dismantling of the national military. This is why they aggravated the situation, and they also encouraged the Hemeti and the RSF to talk loudly about the need for the change of the government, either dismantling the government or restructuring. They use a polite diplomatic word of restructuring the national army and making it more national than it used to be, meaning that all the Islamists or the supposedly Islamist officers or soldiers should be sacked out of the military. There is a lot of literature about this. There is a lot of statements. There is a lot of talk and lectures. They even organized of late panels attended by a lot of foreigners, including United Nations representatives, about restructuring the military. During that time, the military had a lot of information about the possibility of a full-fledged coup, because the RSF were able to position themselves in all the strategic places, not only in Khartoum, the capital, but all over the country. And they marched all the way to Marawi, where there is an air base in the north part of the country. So they alerted the military by these moves. And when the clashes started in April 15th, they already occupied every important place in the capital city and all over the country. They were in the Republican Palace in large numbers. They were within the headquarters of the military, also in large force. They were everywhere, and even those who were their neighbors in the nearby the headquarters of the military, they attacked the homes of their neighbors, the officers, and their family, and they took them hostage and human shield to start the war in the morning of April 15. So this is a very brief background. There is a lot of complex situations in which we can discuss, or which we can discuss for long hours, if need be.
Okay, thank you, Doctor. And I want to continue with you in the second round of our discussion. And here, let me ask you how you evaluate the stances of global and regional power to the crisis. And also there are some claims and also maybe conspiracies regarding some regional or international actors have hand in the eruption of the crisis in Sudan. And also when we look at the discourses of both parties, they are accusing of each other with their relations with global or regional actors? And do you think that whether any international or regional actor influenced the political elites, or they manipulated them to cause a new crisis, a destabilizing crisis in Sudan?
Yeah, certainly. Those who were following the situation in the Sudan, they definitely read a lot about the quartile group of ambassadors, those who call themselves Friends of Sudan, United States of America, United Kingdom, Saudi Arabia, and United Arab Emirates, and how their ambassadors were very active in the political maneuvers and the political movements within the country, meeting a lot of politicians, hosting meetings in their residence, hosting meetings in their embassies, inviting representatives of different political forces to visit their respective capitals, and also meeting the two generals from both sides. And plus, we have also the three groups: United Nations, Africa Union, and IGAD, the sub-regional organization headquartered in Djibouti, were also playing a very important part. But all along, the larger political forces within the country and the political elites within the country saw all these movements of being very pious. It eliminated a lot of voices within the country, and they were insisting on not having even elections. Yes, they were talking always about civilian government without an election, and they brought in Hemeti to be the staunch supporter of this group of what they call it, the framework, the agreement which signed by smaller parties. Everybody knows in the country, anybody who knows the politics of the country, if they go for elections, they will never gain any seat, and they had never gained any seat in their history. Yes, one of them is a major political traditional party, but those who were representing in this group of political forces with the freedom and change forces are the offshoot of larger traditional political parties who were excluded from the political process run or overseen by these different groups, the Friends of the Sudan, the four, and the three, United Nations, and especially the United Nations representative. He was always looked at as having an agenda which led to this fight which happened in the Sudan, because he was talking all the time as a high commissioner, as if he is a colonial master rather than a United Nations representative asked for to help or to assist by the former prime minister in the Sudan. So yes, there is a lot of complexity and complex relations between regional government, regional forces, and also international forces, whether they are countries or organizations, United Nations, Africa Union, IGAD, and other smaller organizations or other regional organizations who are playing very active role, but a very decisive role. They never talked to the political parties as the national political parties, and they were also against any kind of talk about elections. They rejected all along, including the American ambassadors, the British ambassadors, all the representatives of the international relations rejected the idea of elections, which would have helped the country to gain civilian government, which largely representing largely the political forces within the country. I remember vividly, even the military took the chance and starts threatening these political forces which were incubated by this organization, regional organization or regional diplomatic representatives and international organizations, the military start threatening them with the elections. Either you put your act together, either you enlarge or become inclusive, we are going to have elections. And they were always, this is the irony of the Sudanese politics, the military threatening the political forces by announcing or declaring elections all the time, or raising the banner of elections whenever there is a clash between the political forces themselves. Yes, you are right. There is a lot of meddling, regional meddling in the Sudanese case, and also international meddling, which became a very divisive force within the civilian elites, and also between the military, the official military or the national military, and the paramilitary group of the RSF. Despite the fact that we should not also neglect the fact that when this group of the rapid support forces initiated or created, it was created under the canon of the national army. It should be a supporting agency to the national army rather than an independent force, which acted to be in the last couple of years. It used to be under the military. It cannot make any move without the permission of the military. But of late, because of this regional support, because of this internal political support, it start acting independently and head to head against the national military rather than abiding by the laws that created it.
Thank you, Doctor. And I want to direct the same question to Mr. Orakcı, and also, Doctor, you can also bring your arguments, your ideas regarding the stance of neighboring countries. So it can lead to a refugee crisis in the region, and also you may speculate the look of or the stance of African countries, African neighboring countries as well to the crisis. Can you activate Orakcı's microphone, please? Okay.
Yes. For this question, I can say Sudan, the audience should understand something important. This crisis is not an ordinary crisis. It's a very deep crisis. And Sudan is facing right now a very big challenge. Because Sudan is a microcosmos of Africa, usually described like that, microcosmos of Africa. So what happens in Sudan doesn't stay in Sudan. Always there is side effects for the region, for the neighboring countries. The refugee influx is only a small part. There is also economic consequences and some political consequences. So the audience should understand this is a crisis in the center, not in the periphery. So far, the crisis in Sudan usually happened in the peripheries, in the regions. The Southern Sudan crisis, South Kordofan crisis, Blue Nile crisis, and Darfur crisis, they were all in the peripheries, not in the center. But this important crisis is in the center. It is in the Khartoum. Now RSF is controlling part of the Khartoum, and as Mr. ElFaqih said, they are controlling very important and strategic places, and they are challenging to the national army. So this is a quite new for Sudan and a very serious crisis. And in this crisis, we see also some external actors, external countries. They have also influence on the Sudanese transitional period. For example, we don't see too much about China. China is the main buyer of all Sudanese oil. And there is also Russia. Russia has connections. Russia's, especially the Wagner Group, they have connection with the RSF, and they are trading gold from Sudan. And we also know that Moscow is pressuring the generals to gain a naval base in Red Sea, in Port Sudan, because in Djibouti there are some naval bases built by the US, the China, France, Italy, Japan. So to compete with them, especially after the Ukraine crisis started, Russia started pressuring Sudan to get a naval base in the Port Sudan. There is also US. The US was imposing sanctions, as you know, to Sudan until 2018, and they pulled out these sanctions, and the embargo on Sudan has ended. After then, we see the hands of America, the hands of the US in the Sudanese politics. Nowadays, there is a peace negotiations, pre-deal negotiations in Jeddah, and the US is the broker of this peace negotiations. And beside the US, there are also European countries, the British and the France and the Germany. They all have interest in Sudan. The Gulf Arab countries plus the Israel, they have also interest in Sudan. And also the African countries, Ethiopia, Libya, the Haftar group especially, and Chad, they have interest in Sudan. So you can ask why all these actors, all these regional and global powers, what they want from Sudan, why they are very interested in Sudan. Because Sudan is a very rich country, actually. It has oil, it has gold and silver mines, and big amounts. Besides that, there is a very important fertile land for agriculture. Usually Sudan is described as the food basket of Africa, because 200 million feddan land is fertile for the agriculture. And also there is fish reserves in Sudan, because you know the Sudan is bordering Red Sea, and also there is a Nile River, a very huge river from south to the north is cutting Sudan. And there is also uranium and some other, for example, Arabic gum. 80% of all the productions in the world production is produced in Sudan. Arabic gum is very strategic, actually, ingredients for the chemical, for the medical industry. And we know the US is the main buyer of this product, especially when they imposed sanctions on Sudan. They accepted Arabic gum from this list. And throughout all these years, the US bought Sudan's Arabic gum. So Sudan is a very rich country, actually. And from the geopolitical, geostrategical point, Sudan has also has very important connections. The Nile River is very important for Egypt, you know, because Egypt see the Nile as a national security issue. And as you know, there is a quarrel between the Ethiopia and Egypt on the building Renaissance Dam. After that, the Red Sea is a very strategic point, Port Sudan especially, because as I mentioned, all the global actors, they are there in the Red Sea. So Russia wants to be there, and from Israel point of view, it has also a national security issue because Sudan and Israel, they are neighbors throughout the Red Sea. So when you look at all this geopolitical value and the wealth of the country, you can understand why all these actors, they have interest and they want to shape and reshape the Sudan's politics. Unfortunately, I see the influence of the foreign powers in a negative way because they come Sudan with a certain agenda and they come with self-interest, acting very selfishly. And during the period, actually, post-Bashir era, we saw all these actors, they don't want to hear the people's voice. They don't want civilian democratic transition. This is very obvious because they, with their act, they are providing legitimacy to the generals. This is a very important issue, I think, because the generals, two generals, Abdel Fattah al-Burhan and Himeti, they got legitimacy throughout external actors. We know the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, and Haftar and Egypt, they all sit and discuss with these two generals and they support them financially. So at the background, this is my actual opinion, the influence of the foreign powers is not a positive. It is very negative and making the things worse for Sudan. This is my this will be my comment actually. Yeah, Mr. Merjan, I think the external actors' role is very negative.
Okay, thank you. Now, I want to touch another aspect of Sudan crisis, but the role of external actors are highly important to understand the background and also future of and horizon of Sudani crisis. And Mr. ElFaqih, do you have any extra word for 1 minute, or do you want to add something to the role of external actors? Just give a second to activate your microphone. Yeah, please.
Okay, I totally agree that the role of external actors perceived to be negative by the vast majority of the Sudanese elites or public audiences all over, those who are concerned about the Sudanese politics or the political process within the country since 2019. But I also want to add, and they are actively playing a role now. If you look at the media, you can see clearly who is supporting who. Yes, the military is very strong on the ground, but very weak when it comes to political support and media support, regionally or globally or even internally, because there is a lot of actors, foreign actors or external actors who are helping the other side, including pressure groups in Western capitals who are very active nowadays in spreading messages and supporting this side against the other. There is a fact also, the importance of the country. The external, not only external governments, but external elements. People are talking, and not only there is a lot of evidence on this, much of the human support to the RSF are from the region, not only from within the country. We are witnessing the call for support from Chad, from Niger, from Mali, from Mauritania, and also the people or the government in Khartoum now also they are capturing lots of soldiers who are not Sudanese nationals. So it is not only political support, it is not only media support, and it is not only this external financial support. And also we have the importance of the geopolitics of the country and how it affects regional countries. Many of those who are surrounding, or those countries who are surrounding the Sudan, are landlocked, and many of them are fully dependent on the Sudan and the stability of the Sudan. All the oil from the South Sudan goes through the north and goes all the way to Port Sudan. More than 1,700 kilometers of pipelines. They all go through the Sudan. Many of the export-import of a huge country like Ethiopia also comes and goes through the Sudan. Chad, the Central African Republic. So all these countries are fully dependent economically on the Sudan. So the stability of Sudan, it will definitely affect those countries. The reactions of the neighbors now also tells a lot about who is meddling, who is supporting who in this unfortunate clashes and unfortunate war in the country. Immediately, a country like Chad closed its borders because they are not only afraid of refugees coming, but also they are afraid of the returnees, those who are part of the RSF, active soldiers within the RSF, whether they are from Chad itself or will be crossing Chad to Mali and Niger and other countries in West Africa, or Sahel countries in West Africa. And Ethiopia also, which always providing Sudan with hundreds of thousands of refugees, also blocking its borders or restricting the coming of the Sudanese into the national. Just before this, I read that even Eritrea, which is half of its population within the Sudan, as refugees since the early days of the war with Ethiopia, they are also returning back, buses going inside Eritrea. So the only country now welcoming Sudanese is Egypt. Yes, there is some restrictions on who is to go there, and if you are having a visa as a young adult, you can go. The families, they can go without visas. Older people, they can go also without visas. Young people also, they can go. So the only real opening for the Sudanese now, and it's a huge country. Okay. We have also to recognize that the distance between any gate and Khartoum is not less than 1,000 kilometers of distance.
Okay, thank you. Now I would like to continue with a new dimension of the crisis. And the past experiences show us political contestation or political crisis among the elites, governmental elites or military elites in the region could easily turn into a humanitarian crisis or social crisis. And now, Dr. Orakcı, my question about the possibility of an emergence of humanitarian crisis in Sudan. So do you think that this crisis has a potential to turn into a new humanitarian crisis in Sudan or in Middle Eastern or African continent? And also, after you, I will direct my question to Mr. ElFaqih regarding the social dimension of the crisis, because when we take multi-ethnical characteristics of Sudanese society into consideration, so would it be a deeper or would it bring deeper problems in Sudan in societal level? Mr. Serhat, please.
Yes, there are signs that showing the humanitarian crisis is getting deeper because right now the main airport, Khartoum airport, is not functional, out of order, and other civil airports also they're out of service. So only Port Sudan location is available for humanitarian access, and also a couple of military airports. So humanitarian responses right now is very weak because of this difficulty. There is no safe humanitarian corridor, which is imposing a big challenge for the humanitarian organizations, because reaching Port Sudan is not a problem, but from Port Sudan to Khartoum direction, there is a long way, and that way is controlled by different fractions. So this is imposing a big challenge for humanitarian organizations. And the other thing is, as you know, the foreign countries evacuated their citizens, diplomats and the NGO workers. So this also created a panic in the country, and especially leaving the NGOs, international NGOs, that created a very big gap in the humanitarian sector. As we know, right now, more than 60% of hospitals are out of service. They were looted, or they were not functional. Also, there is a food and water lack of water and food in the country. Although there is a ceasefire right now, getting some items is getting difficult, especially the bread and water. Sudan has also electricity problem for a long time, since the Umar al-Bashir era. Getting electricity is very problematic. Transportation, roads, the condition of the roads, and some other situations make the humanitarian operations very difficult in Sudan, as far as I see. There is also migration on the borders, as Mr. ElFaqih said. Sudan-Egyptian border, there is a migration influx, immigrant influx, and on the Sudan-Chad border, Sudan-South Sudan border, Sudan-Eritrea border, and Sudan-Ethiopia border, they are all experiencing right now, witnessing some influx of refugees or displaced people. So this is actually bringing a very catastrophic climate for us, and to respond to this from the humanitarian angle is not an easy task, really, because as I said, there isn't any safe corridor right now, and for example, IHH local teams, they are active in the field right now in Khartoum and in Darfur area, but their power is very limited right now, because there is also the banking system is not functional, so transferring money is also difficult to do that right now. So when you consider the logistical problems, the banking system, and international NGOs' responses, the humanitarian situation is not actually very good, I can say. Additionally, for example, in Jenin, in Nyala, there are heavy fighting in the cities, in the city centers. They are also leaving big casualties, civilian casualties, and United Nations agencies reported that their stores were looted, especially WFP reported that. So this is all putting the situation in a bad direction. As a humanitarian activist, actually, I'm hoping to reach Sudan and to open the way, open the channel. I hope these negotiations happening right now. We hope, inshallah, open a corridor, safe corridor for humanitarian agencies.
Inshallah. Dr. ElFaqih, how about the social relations or social structure right now in Sudan? Do you think that this crisis, of course, we don't hope to that much, but in case of getting deeper and deeper of the crisis, is there any possibility to witness a civil war, an eruption of civil war in the country, or do you think, or what scenarios should we expect regarding the social structure or societal relations in the light of current crisis?
I'm hopeful. I'm very much hopeful that the country would not slide into a civil war, because so far, since this, now we are going beyond 3 weeks on this conflict, the general masses, safely I can say that they are behind the national army, because the RSF is always looked at as a tribal, and within the tribe itself, it is a family-led organization. All the structure on top is from the same family. And this family also, if we talk about Darfur as a social incubator or possible social incubator of the RSF, all those who were against the government, the al-Bashir government in Darfur, fought against the RSF. And the RSF was used also against them by the government of the time, including some part of the same family or ethnic groups within Darfur, who had also fierce fighting against Hemeti during that time, during the war in Darfur and after it. And many dignitaries or big names, sheikhs and others from the same ethnic groups were very quick to distance themselves from what had gone on the morning of April 15th. So up to now, nobody really thinking of a civil conflict. It is military against a paramilitary. The military is getting more support from the general masses than the behavior also after the seemingly losing a lot of grounds, because the military from day one, they were able to destroy all their bases around the country, not only in Khartoum but around the country, and much of their strong holdings within the capital city. So they were left running on the streets. And running on the streets without a chain of support, without bases to return to, or to carry their wounded or their dead to, they became more of a looters in the countries. And it is well documented and well photographed. They are breaking into banks, they are breaking into shops. And this is also distancing. People are emotionally now distancing themselves from these groups, because they are becoming more of looters rather than genuine political force for the good, as they used to claim to be before the break of the war in the country.
Okay, thank you. And before we pass to the last round of our panel, I would like to announce that I can collect your questions, dear participants. I can collect your questions to ask our distinguished guests. If you have any question, you can directly send me through direct message via chat section. And Dr. ElFaqih, what is the next for Sudan? What do you expect about the future of the country in the short and midterm process? And as we know, through the engagement of China, Russia, and even through the normalization process with Israel, Sudan is getting more important country in global politics. And so by taking into consideration this fact, so what do you expect about the political conflict, political contestation among the crisis? And also, can we see a quick political solution for the country? And also, can we witness a sustainable and healthy democratization attempts, democratization process in the country?
Okay, thank you again, and this is the most difficult part. If you are following the details of the day, it sometimes makes it very difficult for you to think ahead or to anticipate. But we are very much optimistic. This crisis will end soon. It is a deep wound, and there is a lot of effects already on the ground. A lot of damage, a lot of looting, a lot of destructions to infrastructure, to institutions, to the human psyche of those who are living in Khartoum in particular. But we are very much hopeful that they will be. They have to come out with a healthy political process. Things must change, and change to the better, because there were a lot of polarization before the start of this conflict, which led to the conflict. That course or this course has to change to have a healthy political processes in the country. Foreign elements, those especially those who were very much active in the past couple of years, they have to disappear, or at least they have to limit their engagement in the country in order for the country to get better, and in order for the politics of the Sudan to yield what the peoples of the Sudan want for their future. And also immediately, I think, after recovery of this conflict, people should think seriously and set a date for an election. You cannot talk about civilian government without an election. A civilian government should not be chosen by foreigners, but by the people of the country. And the people of the country cannot choose a just government without going to the ballot polls, elect whomever they want to elect as their representatives, not to be picked up or picked by foreigners, whether it is the United Nations or the United States or United Kingdom or regional governments. This is a process through which I can see the recovery of the country. Yes, humanitarian actions has to come soon and come now, and the talks in Jeddah now, it is about humanitarian corridors, corridors of tranquility, how to help immediately those who are in need of help in Khartoum, because Khartoum is heavily populated. It's millions of inhabitants. Yes, many quarters of Khartoum are safe now. People are going by their daily business as normal, but the basic institutions which used to provide, as my colleague Serhat said, the electricity, the water, the bank system, which is looted largely by uncontrolled soldiers on the streets, will affect. Definitely, it will have some continuous or continuous effect on the life of the people, so that the recovery has to be coordinated internally and also from all the good forces externally in order for the recovery to be speed up, or to speed up the recovery of the country and concentrate on the political process for the future.
Thank you, respected doctor. And Mr. Orakcı, I want to ask the same question to you to know, to hear your expectations about the country. And although there is much danger for Sudan, how about the opportunities for the future?
Okay, before answering this question, for the humanitarian action, I like to add something important. I think for better response in the humanitarian field, the international Khartoum airport should be immediately opened. And today there was actually a discussion in the African Union, in the related bodies. They are suggesting to operate Khartoum airport by independent countries, Burundi or Ethiopia or any other country. So this is necessary, I think, to implement the humanitarian responses, because without functional airport, it is very difficult to reach Sudanese people. When I come to your question, the possibilities for future and the opportunities, actually, there are some scenarios which was discussed. For example, the continuation of the conflict a long time. This is one of the possibilities, and it can be if the peace efforts fails. These clashes, this conflict will continue maybe 2-3 years, maybe longer. So this is the worst scenario, I think, and it will make a spillover effect of this crisis to other regions inside the country and outside the country. So we hope, inshallah, this will not happen. Peace efforts will be succeeded, we hope. The other scenario, the victor of one side on the other. So at that case, two possibilities. The national army, if defeats the RSF, so Abdel Fattah al-Burhan will be the victorious general, and he will run the country. We don't know how many years more. And if RSF victory comes over the national army, this is also one of the worst scenarios, because this will make Sudan, this will affect Sudan in a negative way, because RSF background, Janjaweed background, and their looting exercises are known well, and their human rights abuses in the Darfur is also known very well. So if they rule the country and if they establish a domination on the political scene landscape, so this will be disaster for Sudan. We hope, inshallah, will not be. And other scenario, if the peace deals succeeds and two sides sit and discuss and agree, and they continue from where they left. So this is also one of the possibilities. So they have to make again power sharing agreement, these two generals, and they have to continue ruling the country maybe another 20-30 years. Allah knows. So from these scenarios, actually, I don't see too much optimistic or positive results, unfortunately. But one thing I'm sure it is the resilience of the Sudanese people. They are very resilient, because Sudan witnessed two civil war before, and Darfur crisis, a very long conflict in the Darfur region, and a lot of social, economic, and political problems so far happened in Sudan during the Bashir era. So we saw the Sudanese people, they are very resilient and they are very psychologically, especially, they have strong, belief systems, and they will be victorious at the end. But this can take a long time, longer than what we expect, actually. But I believe in the Sudanese people too much, and I hope their civilian democratic expectations will be happen in a shorter period.
Okay. Thank you, Doctor. And I want to ask a last question to both of you. Any of you may answer my question if you prefer, but if you don't, you are free. What country does it much opportunity or potential to play a mediating role for this crisis, international or any regional actor? Can you name any country which has a potential?
Serhat first, or it is not with in diplomacy. We learn not to name names. But I crossed this rule in my talk earlier. I mentioned few names of countries. It is difficult now. It is easy for me to say Turkey could play a major role, but if it is for the Sudanese and the decision taken by the Sudanese themselves. But the regional influences of different countries are affecting the image of neutral countries who could be of real help to the Sudan. It is safe for me to say Turkey for so many reasons, historical, whatever. And Serhat might know this, even the aid in the Sudan organizations working on Sudan was always looked at as agenda-less or prestigious kind of aid rather than string attached to all kind of aids in this country. But I think there is some hands playing behind the scene against this possibility in the country already. So from all those countries who sent planes to evacuate their nationals, the only plane that shot at is the Turkish one. And just the other day, the Turkish ambassador who insisted on staying with his staff in Khartoum, despite all the situation, also he was shot at. So there is definitely some hands playing, and in this kind of chaos, the players will be many, will be too many. The snappers will be also too many to aggravate the situation and also to play their own agenda in this ongoing chaos. China is a possibility because China is affected badly because not only because of what is going on between China and the Sudan, but also the oil of Southern Sudan, which will be affected by what is going on in the country right now. It is the most beneficiary or the major beneficiary from the oil of Southern Sudan. And any interruption on the supply of oil, it will affect a country like China. There is other countries might come in without being involved in the last few years in the conflict or the political conflict in the country. They can be mediator. Now there is an involvement. Even those countries who prescribed for themselves to be friends of the Sudan, nobody elected them. But they intervened and they did what they thought right for their interest in the Sudan. But we hope that countries who have no interest in the ongoing conflict now in the Sudan, they will intervene. They will be accepted, or they will be accepted by both sides.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Serhat, do you have any word?
I think Mr. ElFaqih answered well. Turkey can play a role in Sudan's crisis, like other countries, but Turkey should use its capacity, in a correct way. Actually, there are some risks, which is trying to take Turkey inside the conflict, because Turkish evacuation plane was attacked, as you know, and also Turkish ambassador, he was attacked. His car, it was attacked. So there are some, there are some actors, they like to take Turkey inside the conflict directly. So Turkey should be careful and should use its full potential and can be a mediator. I think Turkey has this chance. The China and the other actors, Mr. ElFaqih answered well, so I don't want to open discussion again on that issue. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you for your precious ideas, precious comments and contributions. And I checked the, now I'm checking the chat section. And there is no irrelevant question in the chat section. So I want to conclude the panel session here. Mr. ElSadiq ElFaqih and Mr. Serhat Orakcı, thank you very much for your contribution, for your accepting our invitation to be a part of this great event, this great panel. And also thank you for Islamic countries, academics and authors union for this organizations. Also dear participants, thank you for your all and also for your through your participation. Our event became more valid, more precious, and wish you a healthy day and hope to see you a next program. Have a nice night. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.